like I said, cold introductions, not cold sales. And I think that's something we kind of need to reframe in our mind for a lot of us, especially those of us who maybe struggle with sales. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Freelance Friday podcast. I'm your host, Latasha James, or the Latasha James on Instagram and Twitter if you want to chat with me over there. And today I'm talking about what I did when I first went freelance. Like, I'm talking first day, first week, first month, the things that I focused on when I first decided that I was going to be a full-time freelancer. Now, I did do an episode last season, I believe it was, all about what I did before I quit my job. So I definitely recommend listening to that one either before or after this episode. This is kind of like a part 2 to that. But when I first decided that I was going to quit my job, I was like, what is my week gonna look like? Because working at a day job, I had my little Outlook calendar always booked up. I knew what the next few weeks were gonna look like, what meetings I was gonna be participating in. And it was really strange when I got to the end and I, got to the end of my month or 2 notice. I gave like a really long time notice and I had nothing there. It was like, what do I do? So this is your guide, okay? In general, this is like, if you don't listen to the rest of this episode, at least hear this part. Focus on revenue generating activities first. At least that's what I did. I did have some clients before I went full-time freelance. I had a couple. They weren't anything like massive. I wasn't doing these massive contracts or anything like that. And I hadn't been working with the contracts I had for very long, but I did have a couple of projects to work on. So whenever I could, or first, like I said, not whenever I could, but just first and foremost, I would always make sure that I was taking care of those clients because they were all that I had really. So I wanted to make sure that they were satisfied, that they were happy, obviously to retain them, but also even if I didn't retain them so that I would get a good testimonial and a good review from them. So focus on that first. But let's say that I had no clients at all. There are other things that you can do as well that are still considered revenue generating activities. And what revenue generating activities means is exactly how it sounds, things that make you money. Focus on that first. So you can use that time to look on job boards, Upwork, things like that. For me, since I have YouTube, I would also consider YouTube a revenue generating activity. Even though it's a very small revenue stream, it is a revenue stream of mine. So I wouldn't feel too guilty if I posted a YouTube video. Now, obviously I had to temper that as well because I didn't want to be like, okay, well, I'm going to post videos, just that's all I'm going to do, because it has a pretty low payoff and it also isn't immediate. You can also just do small gigs here and there, even if it's selling one-off consulting calls, like strategy calls or something, you can do things like that. So I really worked on my existing contracts, looked on Upwork and on, LinkedIn and things like that, and posted YouTube. Those were like my revenue generating activities, anything that made me money. And I would also try to, I don't do this so much anymore. And you guys know, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, that I don't really do hourly work a ton, but I would try to equate my projects with an amount. If I spent 4 hours working on an Upwork project, I would sit down at the end of the day and say, okay, I made $400 today, $300, whatever it was based on, the contract amount, the hourly rate, whatever it was. So I think that's really important because, I don't know, I feel like we're in this time where it's really trendy in the entrepreneurial community to be like, stop trading time for money. And I totally agree with that. My second biggest revenue stream is a passive revenue stream. So I totally agree with that. But at the same time, time still is money. And especially when you're starting out as a freelancer, time is money. So you don't want to be spending, like I said, 40 hours a week on YouTube when you're making 5 cents from YouTube. So that's that. Then, if you don't have any existing revenue generating opportunities, you're definitely going to need to do this next thing, which is lead generation. So what I did on really I think it was week 2, I decided to start hosting webinars monthly, I believe it was. I did monthly webinars, both on this brand, so latashajames.com for coaching clients, and then on jamesandpark.com for service-based clients. So I would do 2 webinars a month. pretty easy. I just used an unlisted YouTube link. I set up a quick landing page in Squarespace, and I would create these little mini trainings. I did like lunch and learn style trainings, hour long, about kind of taking a deep dive into a different topic. So for my coaching clients, it was often like how to pitch yourself to brands, or how to, like something that helped with their business. And then for service-based clients, it was video marketing strategy, or why you need content, or something of that nature. I'd host these, and the great thing about hosting webinars is that you get their email addresses. So people would sign up, and I would get their email addresses, and then I could add them into my funnel, and it was this whole thing. For the service-based side of things, my James and Park leads, I would actually contact them directly and say, hey, do you want to hop on a discovery call? So those were actually very successful. They were so successful that I stopped doing them because I got booked out. So I do actually really want to start doing something like that again, to give value to the community and maybe lead them down my courses or something, because I got too overwhelmed with actually working with people, so I didn't end up doing it. So definitely recommend doing something like that. As far as driving traffic to those webinars, I just use my existing audience. I did run a couple of LinkedIn ads for my agency. The great thing about LinkedIn ads is that you can target super closely for businesses, because it's a business platform. So I would target like CEOs, founders, VPs of marketing, CMOs, basically decision makers, people who had some influence over the marketing budget. And that's why I would target. And I did get a few like signups from ads, but a big portion of my signups just came organically from my existing LinkedIn network. I also applied on Upwork. Like I said, I know everybody has like different feelings about Upwork, and I mean, there's others too. There's Guru, there's Cloud Peeps is one that I am on. I've gotten like some good gigs from Cloud Peeps actually. So I'd apply for gigs on places like that. You can also look on LinkedIn, look on Indeed, any typical job board, and see if there are remote or freelance opportunities as well. So in the beginning, when I had like my one or two small clients, I would make sure, I'd basically force myself to spend at least an hour or so a day on lead generation. So whether that was looking on Upwork, looking on LinkedIn, just like searching, freelancing sites like Angel List and things like that, and kind of working on sourcing leads. I would spend at least an hour a day. It was usually in the beginning of the day too. And there's science to like when you should reach out and when you should apply for jobs and stuff. So Google that, because I don't know the exact time. I want to say that if you're going to send a cold email, it's like Tuesday after lunch, but it may want to fact check me there. But I didn't get that specific. I just applied when I wanted to. And usually it was in the mornings, just to kind of get it out of the way. And I don't know. That's what worked for me. I also sought out speaking gigs. So I was already a part of some kind of networking groups in the area, which I definitely recommend. Again, definitely check out that episode about what you should do before you quit your job. But I do think that's one thing you might want to consider is, building up a network before you quit, so that you're not on day one, like all by yourself. You have no leads, you have no idea what to do. So I was a part of a couple of groups already. So I kind of put myself forth and said, hey, like I have more time now, would love to do some talks or whatever. So I presented at a couple of things within like the first 3 months of me quitting my day job. I was able to do some presentations, which ended up resulting in, I definitely would say some work. I got a little bit of work from a couple of those opportunities, and also portfolio stuff. Like, you got to be thinking now you're in a different mindset when you're a full-time freelance. So obviously the dream situation is that everything you do is going to lead into a client or some kind of a paycheck. But if not, I would always be like, okay, well, these are cool photos that I can add to LinkedIn or that I can add to my portfolio, or this person who invited me to speak at her event, maybe she'll write me like a testimonial or be a referral partner for me or something like that. So I know it sounds silly, like, oh, it's a cool photo op, but like, you got to think that way. Put it on your website, put it on your resume as a place that you spoke. Like, these are all good things. And last thing about that is I do this all the time. I repurpose my talks that I give if I'm allowed to. Sometimes they have like, you're not allowed to do that, but if I'm allowed to, I'll repurpose them into a little course or a webinar. So my free course, it's called DIY Your Social Media Strategy. That came out of a speaking gig that I did few years ago now. And then when I quit my job, I did a video marketing kind of presentation at a local group that turned into a webinar. I basically just changed a couple of things and did a webinar and then was able to acquire some clients that way. You can also make cold introductions. I kind of spoke about this already when I was talking about Upwork and like times of day to reach out to people, but I'm just like, I don't really do a lot of cold emailing, cold pitching. So I put cold introductions because that is something that I do. I think we overthink this. I think we overthink it. What would you do if you went to an event and there was somebody that you wanted to work with? What would you do, in that situation? You would walk up to them and you'd say, hey, how's it going? My name's Latasha. I love your company. Great to meet you, right? Like, it doesn't need to be this like, oh my gosh, here's a link to my Calendly and like, here's this discount, like, here's this, like, definitely don't do that. Please don't do that. But, just find people who you like and like, give them a little compliment. I mean, that's honestly all that it has to be. So I would do a lot of research into, I don't do a lot of local clients, but I was kind of open to that when I first left my day job. So I would look into like local business websites, news, write-ups and stuff like that to see kind of what businesses were making some money, doing some cool things. And I would try to find their founders either on LinkedIn or Twitter. Maybe if I was inspired by them, if they did something I really liked, I would tag them in an Instagram story, tag them in a tweet, tag them on LinkedIn in an appropriate way. Of course, like not hire me, but in a, oh, this is an awesome company. This is an awesome quote by this founder, that kind of thing. So I would definitely do that as well. Like I said, cold introductions, not cold sales. And I think that's something we kind of need to reframe in our mind for a lot of us, especially those of us who maybe struggle with sales. I don't so much anymore. I found out I'm actually really good at sales. But when I first started, I was terrified of selling. And I think that's why, because I was thinking about it like, this weird thing. Really, I was just introducing myself to these companies. So that's lead generation. Now, the next thing that I really thought hard about was financials. So, well, this isn't even on my list here, but let's talk about it. I definitely made a note in my phone. Yep, financial goals. Okay, so I have by age 30, which is coming up here quick. Okay, made that. 12-month goal, 6-month goal, 3-month goal. And basically for me, since we're talking about the first day, first week, first month, my 3-month, I guess that's the only thing I made. I kind of like was preparing myself in my head for potentially being under in month 1, which is okay, meaning I losing a little bit of money potentially. That wasn't the goal necessarily, but I wanted to be realistic. And that's a big part of your exit plan, is make sure you have enough money to where you're not going to stress out if you don't, if you make $500 in your first month, you can't stress out about that, or I mean, you can, but you don't want to. It's not a good place to be in. So I wasn't too stressed about making, $10,000 or whatever on month 1. So my first goal was a 3-month goal. And that was, I feel like I set the bar a little bit low because I think that was less than I was making at my day job, but it was about 1 month of expenses. Like it was basically breaking even within 3 months, which I think is fair. And I think I always said that in the back of my head, like, okay, if I'm not, making my expenses, surviving, I'm on my own, like no help from, my partner, my parents, nothing like that, which I don't get anyway, but just to clarify, then I need to start looking for a job at that 3-month point or pivoting my strategy or doing something else. So that's what I did. And then my 6-month goal was like about what I made at my day job. And then a year was about double what I made at my day job. So I set these different milestones for myself. Luckily, I made those milestones. Like I made the top milestone, I think like 3 or 4 months in. So it does definitely keep you on track. And I think it keeps you on track to make sure that you are earning something, because I know a lot of people, either they set the goal way too, like they're like, I want to make, like I said, $20,000 in month 1, which just isn't very realistic unless you already have like a good pipeline built, or they'll do the thing where they don't set any goals. And then next thing you know, it's a year later and they're not making any money and they have no plan B. They haven't been looking for jobs. Maybe they haven't been keeping their options open for other things. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. So set some goals. Then if you haven't yet, now I had these already from when I was side hustling, but start a business bank account, a business credit card if you trust yourself with it. I had one. Again, I was already in business for 6 years at that point, off and on. It was definitely different than being a full-time freelancer, but so, I was a little bit more comfortable with having a business credit card, but if you're not good with credit cards, don't get a business credit card. One of the big reasons that I chose to get a business credit card is for travel. I knew that I was going to have some business travel coming up that year. I prefer to book travel on credit cards for a lot of reasons. But definitely get a business bank account because then you can start separating your finances correctly. It's going to make tax time a lot less stressful. You can just buy your business expenses with your business debit or credit card, and it just makes things a lot easier and more legit. And in order to get a business bank account, you're going to need some type of business entity for yourself as well. So whether that is an LLC, an S Corp, whatever, you need to talk to a lawyer or somebody who knows that stuff specifically. I personally started an LLC, but that's not, legal or financial advice. You got to do the situation that's right for you. But I, again, had my LLC already when I was in my day job. And then you also want to get financial systems in order, double check all the transactions, make sure that I'm marking the ones that are for business and for personal. So make sure to get acquainted with that so tax time is not a surprise. And with that, start a tax account or some type of a system for saving for your taxes. Again, this is not tax, legal, financial advice. I'm not any of those things, but I would always save like 30 to 40% of every invoice. And when I say that, a lot of people think that sounds high, but I live in a place where I have to pay city taxes as well, which is like so annoying. And I ended up always having to pay a lot. And worst case scenario, you're going to oversave and then you're going to get to treat yourself a little bit when you file your taxes because you will have saved too much. So it's better to save too much than too little. So start a system for that. Operations. Let's talk about that. So operations, I started to document my processes. Again, I was kind of side hustling, not kind of, I was definitely side hustling before I went full time. So I kind of started doing this, but honestly, not really. Like it wasn't until I was a full-time business owner that I realized how important processes are. Because before it was like, it doesn't really matter if like it's perfect because I don't really technically need this to work. I don't need to scale this business. It's fine. It's just a side hustle. But when you realize like how much time you spend on crafting proposals or, setting up clients' accounts, you're like, oh my gosh, I need this to be turnkey so I can scale it, so I can have 5 of these done in the amount of time it takes me to do one. My processes are honestly nothing fancy, just a simple document that has screenshots and links. I really like Loom as well if I'm kind of in a hurry and I just want to record a screen share of how I'm doing something. The other reason that documenting processes is so important is not just for you, but also if you're going to hire. And I know what you're thinking. You might be like, I'm not going to hire. I'm like, I haven't even made my first little goal yet, But things happen quick. Like if things go well, things start to happen really quick. And next thing you know, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I have 10 clients. There's no way I can service all these people. And you either have to say no to those clients or you have to hire somebody. So if you do have to hire somebody or get to hire somebody, it's a good thing. You want to be prepared for that. You don't want to be like, oh my gosh, now I have to write out all these trainings, because that's what trips people up a lot is they don't prepare for it and then they end up being a bad boss because they don't have like the resources to provide their new hire. So document your processes. And then also I created a lot of onboarding materials. So again, I was like reinventing the wheel every single time when I was side hustling. I was like making up client onboarding documents and processes and trainings, and like every client had a different process. Sometimes I'd meet with them first, sometimes I'd go to their office, sometimes I'd have a Zoom, sometimes I'd do this, that. I standardized that. So this is what everybody gets. Now, of course, if something needs to be adjusted, that's fine. But I had a standard process and documents that kind of showed, here are my working hours, here's how you contact me, here's how you pay your invoice, all that stuff. I created standard onboarding materials. And the last thing is a little bit boring. And I talked about this a little bit in the What to Do Before You Quit Your Job podcast, but I changed my habits in that first month a lot. I don't think I ate out once. I think the only time I did, I I did let my partner treat me. That is like the one bit of help that I would accept is free meals. But I didn't spend any money on eating out. I literally, like, my first month freelancing full time, I was eating rice and beans. And when I wanted to get fancy, I would eat like vegetables. Like I would get like bell peppers and saute them with onions and throw them in my rice and beans. It's actually like a really good meal, but I mean, eating it every day for a month was a little bit overboard, but that was super cheap. I mean, rice is like $2 or something. Don't, starve yourself. Like make sure that your health is in check, because that's important too. You don't want to burn out. You don't want to crash. You don't want to not be healthy. But do what you can to eliminate, to really trim costs when you can. I even consolidated my vehicles. So I had 2 cars. I got rid of one. Norris and I started sharing my car, and it just helped save expenses, monthly expenses that I had to pay. So whatever you can do. Now, like I said, you don't want to like make yourself miserable. You want to eat food. You want to have enjoyment. I did still go out with friends. I don't drink, for those of you who don't know, so it's not like I was going out to the bar, but I would go out and get a coffee with a friend, or go, I don't know, that's pretty much all I do for fun is go get coffee. But I would do things still, because you don't want to be miserable and be like, why am I doing this? You want it to still be enjoyable. And if you hate it, if you're miserable your first month, you're going to quit. You're going to be like, wow, it was more fun being an employee. Why am I even doing this? So leave room in the budget to have fun, but just be mindful of it. Because when I was working a corporate day job, I was spending money like I was going out of style, and I didn't even realize it. I've always thought I was such a frugal person, but it's like when you have that guaranteed, whatever, that guaranteed 4-figure paycheck or whatever it is, it's like, oh, like I'm going to get this on this date. So go crazy, go nuts. Who cares? And when it's a little bit more unsure, even though I had savings, I had the money to buy pizza if I wanted to, but I knew that it wasn't promised like that to be replenished. So I just became a lot more mindful of it. So that's what I did there, honestly. I also planned to skip my vacation that year. And again, this is not to be miserable. Like I didn't want to make myself miserable or anything, but twofold. One, it was expenses. I didn't want to throw away a couple $1,000s, because realistically, that's how much it costs to go on vacation most anywhere, with your flight, your hotel, your food, your entertainment. It's like at least going to be a couple $1,000. But also because I wasn't sure where my business was going to be at that point. And I just didn't want to plan to have to step away from the business for a week or more, potentially somewhere where I didn't have internet or phone access. I just kind of prepared myself in advance to know. I had just went on a work trip like a month before I left my day job. So I kind of got a little travel bug out of my system. I just wanted to prepare myself for like, let's just skip the vacation this year, just so it doesn't make things even more stressful and I have to delegate work or outsource work or, be working on my vacation. So I just mentally prepared myself for that so that it wasn't a disappointment. And it wasn't. It was fine, because I had already, kind of planned for it. So that is what I focused on for my first month, really, of being a full-time freelancer. I would like to thank Charmaine for reviewing my How to Be a Social Media Manager course. If you are in this position where you are thinking about becoming a full-time freelancer, specifically a freelance social media manager, definitely recommend you grab this course. Having some type of mentorship, some type of guide along the way really can help take some of the stress off. And Charmaine said it was an excellent course. Latasha provides all the information needed within a nicely presented course at a nice pace with valuable content and downloads. I'd recommend this course to anyone who wants to become a social media manager. Latasha already gives great value in her YouTube videos, but provides tons more of great guidance and information within the course. I've searched everywhere over the last few years to learn about becoming a social media manager, and I have no regrets with purchasing this course. Well done, Latasha, and thank you so much. So yeah, I'll leave that linked in the show notes and in the description box below if you want to check that out. I might have a sneaky little discount code for Freelance Friday podcast listeners as well. And I think that's it. That's it for the episode today. I hope this was helpful. Good luck if you are one of those people who is planning to go freelance full time, and definitely leave me a comment on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, review the podcast on Apple Podcasts if you're listening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Show notes for this episode are available at latashajames.com/podcast and contain all of the links I may have mentioned today, as well as an invitation to join my private Facebook group, the Freelance Friday Podcast Community. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.